Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we take your sources, unpack them, and really try to find the most fascinating insights hidden inside.
That's what we do.
And today, we're diving into something pretty unique, actually. It's source material drawn from excerpts of a classic science fiction narrative. But it's presented more like a historical account, from a possible future. It's all about pushing the boundaries, human exploration, right out to the edge of the galaxy.
And encountering forces that are just, beyond our usual understanding.
Yeah, exactly. So think of this deep dive as us examining a kind of historical document, just one from the future, perhaps. We're going to look at the chain of events described, how things unfolded.
And the really difficult choices that people had to make in this account. Plus the, frankly, terrifying ways individuals were transformed when they hit the unknown.
So our mission today, if you like, is three things. First, we want to understand what the source says happened out there, right at the galactic edge. Second, we want to explore how hitting some unknown force could just radically change people. What's the mechanism described?
Right.
And third, maybe the biggest one, is grappling with the impossible choices people faced when suddenly someone gets power that's beyond human scale, beyond control.
Power exceeding humanity, as the outline puts it. It's a huge theme. It really challenges our ideas about potential and peril and, what being human even means.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack this material and see what this source actually reveals.
Let's do it.
So the narrative kicks off by setting this scene, this ultimate exploration context. You've got this vessel, and it's getting closer and closer to the absolute edge of the galaxy.
The final frontier, quite literally in this case. A boundary defining everything we know, right?
Yeah.
It's a place of huge mystery.
And as it turns out, unexpected danger. Because right there, at that threshold, something happens. Something that connects them straight back to the past. They pick up a signal.
Yeah, but not just any signal. It's a recorded distress call. And the identification... it's chilling. It's from the SS Valiant.
The Valiant.
A ship that went missing over 2 centuries earlier. Vanished without a trace. Presumed lost. Out here.
200 years. I mean, just pause on that. That single piece of information just throws up a whole storm of questions, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like, did another Earth ship really probe this far out way back then? What could possibly have happened to it?
And maybe the big one. Is this signal, this sort of ghost voice from the past, is it a warning? Finally found after all this time.
They track it down. Not to a ship, though. It's coming from this small object, maybe only a meter across.
Yeah.
And they identify it pretty quickly as an old-style ship recorder. Like a black box designed to be ejected if things go catastrophically wrong. A last resort to save the data.
And the condition of this recorder, the source describes it as burnt, pitted.
Grim, isn't it? Tells you straight away that whatever took down the Valiant involved, intense heat, physical destruction. It suggests total annihilation.
The actual tapes inside are useless, apparently.
Yeah.
But there's hope for the memory banks. The digital storage, maybe that survived.
And it did, partly. Accessing those banks, using the ship's computer, the narrative calls it Mr. Spock's computer, they start piecing together fragments, little bits of the Valiant's last moments.
Okay, so what did they find? What's the initial picture?
Well, the Valiant's logs say they hit a magnetic space storm. We don't get much detail on what that is exactly, but it was powerful.
Powerful enough to overwhelm their engines.
Yeah, their old impulse engines weren't strong enough to fight it. They got swept along uncontrollably right towards the galactic edge.
Wow.
Swept past the point they were aiming for, actually. Went about half a light year out of the galaxy.
Yeah, the galaxy entirely.
Yeah. Then somehow the records say they were thrown clear. They managed to turn around, start heading back in. But mixed in with all this technical stuff are these vague, unsettling mentions of encountering an unknown force.
An unknown force. Okay, that sounds ominous.
And this is where the Valiant's recording just takes this sharp, almost frantic turn. It becomes absolutely central to the whole story. The logs shift from engineering reports to command decisions.
How so?
You see records of orders, then counter orders, and then these repeated, really urgent requests being put into the ship's computer. They're desperately searching the ship's own library for information about ESP and human beings.
ESP, extrasensory perception. But why? They've just escaped a space storm, encountered some unknown force they're trying to get home. Why is their top priority suddenly researching ESP?
That's the huge mystery, isn't it? Delivered straight from the Valiant's final moments. The immediate assumption, based on the recorder's condition and the logs, is that the Valiant didn't last long after this. It was destroyed, either by the unknown force or maybe something that happened because of their ESP search. But the narrative suggests that finding this recorder, even burnt and fragmented, is crucial. It means the Valiant's destruction, while tragic, provides vital data. It's even called probably the best argument to continue the probe, to find out what dangers are waiting out there.
So the loss has a purpose, in a grim sort of way.
Right, but that frantic search for ESP info that just hangs there, a massive question mark echoing across 2 centuries. It's the big clue, hinting at what this unknown force might actually be, or what it does.
Okay, so they have this cryptic warning, this hint, about an unknown force linked somehow to ESP, and they decide to press on anyway. Driven by that need to know, I guess.
Exactly. The need to understand the frontier, even if it's dangerous. And then they experience it themselves.
Right.
As they get right up to the boundary, the galaxy edge, as it's called, they hit something.
Physically hit it.
Seems like it. Not an object they can see or scan normally, but definitely a physical obstruction, a force field of some kind.
And this is where the science, even the fictional science, gets really weird, right?
Totally baffling. The ship's deflectors, the shields designed to push stuff away, they register something there. There's resistance of physical interaction.
Okay.
But all the other sensors, they're screaming impossibilities. Density negative, radiation negative, energy negative.
Negative readings. How is that even possible?
Exactly. What kind of force physically stops a starship but has no detectable density, no radiation, no energy signature? It's like hitting an invisible, non-existent wall that's still solid enough to wreck you.
And the impact is destructive.
Oh, yeah. Immediate devastating damage. The sourceless sit. Main engines are out. They're knocked onto emergency power cells. Gravity control is failing. It drops down to 0.8.
And people.
Tragically, yes. 9 dead. This barrier, whatever it is, it's not passive. It's lethal.
So after this impact, the medical teams must be scrambling. What do they find? Especially regarding the casualties.
This is where that strange connection to the Valiant's ESP query snaps into terrifying focus. The autopsy reports on the 9 dead crew members show this consistent, disturbing pattern.
What is it?
Each case showed damage to the body's neural circuit. Specifically, an area of the brain was, quote, burned out.
Burned out. Not like impact trauma, then. Something else.
Exactly. It's not blunt force. It seems like the energy, whatever it was, targeted their neural pathways directly.
Which leads to the obvious question about the survivors.
Precisely. The immediate perplexing question is, why were only certain people affected this way? The medical logs are explicit. Out of our whole crew, only certain people were affected by this specific neural damage or by the subsequent changes that started appearing.
Okay, so it wasn't random. There's a selection criteria, somehow.
And that's where they find the link. The echo of the Valiant's final frantic search. The individuals who were affected, the source names, Lieutenant Commander Gary Mitchell, Dr. Elizabeth Daner, and a few others, they all had something in common recorded in their personnel file.
Don't tell me.
Yep. They all had a high degree of extrasensory perception.
Wow.
And the source singles out Gary Mitchell. He had the highest ESPER rating of all personnel on the ship.
So the narrative draws a direct line. Encountering the barrier, the neural damage or alteration, and having strong latent ESP abilities. It's not a coincidence.
Not at all. It strongly suggests the barrier interacts not just with the ship's structure, but with specific biological, maybe even mental potentials within the crew. And for those with high ESP ratings, those neural circuits weren't just burned out destructively. It seems like they were somehow overloaded, altered, maybe even activated by the energy, but with this initial traumatic physical effect.
So the highest rated person, Gary Mitchell.
Yeah.
What happens to him first? What are the initial signs?
Well, the source meticulously tracks his early changes, and one of the first things noted isn't pain or disorientation, it's his eyes.
His eyes. How?
He notices it himself first, says they kind of stare back at me when I'm shaving, like they have this weird reflective quality. Later, others describe them more dramatically, changing back and forth between normal and something else. Something described as radiant or silvery or just powerful, unnervingly so.
Okay, that's creepy. But how does he feel after hitting an energy barrier and having his brain apparently fried?
That's the other really unsettling part. Subjectively, he feels great. He keeps saying he feels better than I've ever felt before. He even says the barrier encounter seems to have done me some good.
Better. That's a disconnect, isn't it? between the physical evidence and his own experience.
A huge disconnect. It immediately flags that something deeply strange is happening. And this isn't just a feeling. The enhancement starts showing up objectively, really fast. Mentally, the records note him suddenly picking up complex philosophy texts, long hair stuff like Spinoza, stuff he presumably wasn't reading before. But the key observation is the speed.
He's reading faster.
Way faster. The log says he's reading even faster now than just a few moments ago. It's not just feeling sharper. His cognitive processing speed is measurably, objectively increasing right before their eyes. It's the first concrete sign that this is more than just psychological shock.
So putting it together, the barrier hits, seems to damage neural circuits. But for people with high ESP, like Mitchell, it also somehow unlocks or supercharges something inside them.
Yeah, that's the picture emerging. And Mitchell, having the highest rating, is the first and most dramatic example.
Yeah.
He's already showing these enhanced mental abilities. And this is where the transformation described in the source really kicks into high gear and, frankly, starts getting terrifying.
Okay, so they've got him in sickbay under observation. What happens next? Does it keep accelerating?
Oh, does it ever? The rate and the nature of his change become incredibly alarming really quickly. His accelerated reading goes off the charts. He demonstrates astonishing total recall.
Like photographic memory.
Beyond that, it seems, he's documented as going halfway through the ship's library in hardly a day, just absorbing massive amounts of information impossibly fast.
Oh, any specific examples?
Yeah, the source gives one. They ask him to, quote, a love sonnet, maybe as a test. He doesn't just recite it perfectly from memory. He instantly identifies the author, the origin, all the context, pulling details straight from this vast amount of literature he's just vacuumed up.
Okay, that's impressive, but still maybe within the bounds of extreme savantism or something.
Maybe, but then it goes further. Far beyond memory or speed reading, he starts showing control over his own body in ways previously thought impossible, manipulating certain autonomic reflexes.
Like heart rate. Breathing.
Yeah.
Stuff you can't normally control.
Exactly. Stuff usually only achieved through intense meditation, maybe, or altered states. But he's doing it casually, seemingly at will.
That's unnerving.
And that internal control quickly pushes outwards. The source describes him starting to manipulate the sickbay equipment mentally.
Telekinesis. Moving things with his mind.
Pretty much. He explains it with this chilling simplicity. He just thought of making it happen, and it does. Making dials on medical scanners turn, changing readings on monitors, purely by thinking about it.
Okay, that's definitely way beyond just ESP as most people think of it.
Absolutely. And then comes this truly dramatic, deeply disturbing demonstration of just how far his power is developing. He stops his own body functions. Completely.
Stops them, you mean like?
Like death. Dr. Daner, who's monitoring him, confirms the impossible. Her words are quoted. You were dead for almost 22 seconds. There were no readings at all.
He stopped his own heart.
Everything.
Everything. No respiration, no brain activity, nothing. He literally turned himself off just to show that he could. And then presumably turn himself back on.
That's power over life and death. His own, at least. That's terrifying.
Utterly terrifying. And amidst all this, the source includes this really key discussion about ESP itself. It highlights the clash between Dr. Diener's view and Mr. Spock's view.
Right, the psychiatrist versus the logician. Sort of. Diener initially holds the more conventional scientific perspective. ESP is limited, she thinks. Maybe sensing the future a bit, reading cards, that kind of thing. And crucially, she believes there's nothing about it that could possibly make a person dangerous. Her framework is based on known human abilities, you know.
Understandable from her perspective. But Spock disagrees.
Strongly. His counterpoint is vital because it opens the door to the truly unknown. He questions if what they're seeing with Mitchell is something else entirely. Is there another kind of power, linked perhaps to ESP, but far beyond just sensing things?
Like the telekinesis and stopping his heart.
Exactly. Spock raises hypotheticals like seeing through walls or starting fires spontaneously, things that map frighteningly well onto what Mitchell is actually starting to do. It challenges Diener's limited definition and underlines that they are way off the map here, dealing with something unprecedented.
And as Mitchell's power grows, does his personality? Does he change?
Radically and disturbingly. The source makes it very clear. He becomes increasingly arrogant, dismissive, contemptuous of everyone around him, detached.
How does that manifest? Beyond just attitude.
Well, his powers continue expanding. He demonstrates clairvoyance, remote viewing. He knows the precise condition of some failing impulse pack relays deep within the ship's engineering section without being anywhere near them.
Oh.
He just says the image of what he'd seen was still in his mind, like he could just look wherever he wanted. And Kelso, the engineer, later confirms his description was perfectly accurate.
So he can perceive things remotely. Can he affect things remotely too?
Oh, yes. That comes next. Chaos suddenly erupts on the bridge. The source describes the bridge control started going crazy, levers shifting by themselves, buttons being pushed, instrument readings changing.
Mitchell doing it from sickbay.
Yep. He's manipulating the ship's core systems remotely like it's a game, treating this complex starship and its crew like toys.
That's incredibly dangerous. And the contempt.
It becomes overt. Cruel, even. He starts calling experienced officers like Kelso a fool. He refers to Dr. Daner, who's still trying to understand and maybe help him, as a walking freezer unit.
Ouch.
The narrative paints this picture of him smiling faintly as he causes chaos on the bridge, viewing the ship and its crew as almost a toy for his amusement. It's not just arrogance anymore. It feels like a fundamental dehumanization of others. They're becoming insignificant objects to him.
And the speed of all this. How fast is it happening?
That's the most frightening part, according to the analysis provided, particularly by Spock. His assessment is clinical, logical, and absolutely chilling. He states Mitchell's ability isn't growing linearly, it's increasing geometrically.
Geometrically, like exponential growth.
Exactly. He uses that classic, easy-to-grasp analogy, a penny doubling every day.
Right. Start small, but very quickly becomes enormous.
Precisely. If you start with 1 penny and double it daily, in less than a month, you're a millionaire. Spock applies that to Mitchell's power, his terrifying prediction. In less than a month, Mitchell will have attained powers we can't understand and can't cope with.
Powers beyond comprehension and control. In weeks, maybe days.
That's the implication of geometric growth. The jumps in power become staggeringly large, incredibly quickly. The inevitable consequence, Spock points out, is that very soon, normal humans will become not only useless to him, but actually an annoyance.
An annoyance. Like insects.
That's the feeling. Our limitations, our reliance on physical tech, our very presence. It would just grate on someone operating on a completely different level of power in existence. This geometric progression isn't just a concern. It predicts an imminent, unavoidable existential crisis for the crew.
Okay, so the situation is dire. They're trapped far from Earth, the ship is crippled, and one of their own is transforming exponentially into something incredibly powerful, unpredictable, and increasingly hostile.
Yeah, it doesn't just pose a threat anymore. It forces them into this immediate gut-wrenching ethical corner. It demands an impossible choice right now.
The crew must realize how bad this is getting, right?
Oh, absolutely. The narrative stresses that they recognize the scale of the threat very quickly. Mitchell's power isn't theoretical, it's manifesting constantly, growing visibly, day by day, hour by hour, and the ship is still damaged from the barrier. They can't just warp back to Earth quickly.
So they can't wait. Time is running out fast because of that geometric curve.
Exactly. And this is where the internal conflict, the ethical dilemma, really becomes the heart of the story. It's powerfully shown through the different viewpoints of the key officers.
You mentioned Spock's view earlier. What's his logical take now?
It's stark. Pure logic. No emotion involved, at least not visibly. He sees Mitchell as a clear, present, and rapidly escalating existential threat to the ship, to the crew, potentially to anyone he might encounter later.
So his recommendation is?
Brutal, but logical from his standpoint. Act immediately. 2 options. Either maroon Mitchell on some uninhabited planet where he can't hurt anyone else, or kill him while you still can, as the source quotes him. His logic dictates the safety of the many outweighs the fate of the one, especially when that one is becoming this kind of fundamental danger.
Okay, that's the logical extreme. What about Dr. Diener? Is she still seeing potential?
Initially, yes. She represents a different perspective, grounded in her medical and psychiatric training, and maybe subtly influenced by the barrier's effects starting in her too, though maybe she doesn't fully realize it yet.
So she argues against Spock.
She focuses on the potential upside. She actually says, a mutated superior man could also be a wonderful thing, the forerunner of a new and better, what kind of human being? She's seeing possible evolution, not just monstrosity.
Does she downplay the danger?
A bit. She asks, rhetorically, no one's been hurt, have they? Which is, well, tragically ironic given what happens later. Her view is rooted in hope, in the potential for this transformation to be something positive, despite the warning signs.
And then there's Captain Kirk, caught in the middle.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And for him, it's intensely personal. The source really emphasizes his deep history with Mitchell. They've known for 15 years. They went through Starfleet Academy together. Kirk specifically requested Mitchell for his first command. They're friends, brothers in arms.
So the idea of harming him, let alone killing him.
It's agonizing for him. He's grappling with it intensely. His perspective is the human element, writ large loyalty, compassion, the bonds of friendship clashing head-on with the cold, hard logic of the situation presented by Spock. This isn't just some abstract threat analysis. It's his oldest friend turning into a monster.
And didn't you say the Valiant story comes back into play here?
Yes, crucially, Spock explicitly connects their current nightmare back to the fate of the SS Valiant. He brings up the salvaged log, suggesting the Valiant's captain likely faced the exact same scenario, a crew member transformed by the barrier and, tragically, waited too long to make his decision.
So the past is screaming a warning? Hesitation is fatal?
Exactly. That historical precedent, drawn directly from their own discovery, makes the stakes crystal clear. It validates the need for action, however terrible.
Okay, so the clock is ticking, Mitchell's power is exploding, the Valiant's fate looms over them. They have to decide. What are the practical options?
Well, they establish the Enterprise can't make it back to an Earth base in time. Mitchell will be uncontrollable long before they get there, but there's a nearby uninhabited planet, Delta Vega.
Delta Vega. What's special about it?
It's desolate, but it has a functioning, automated lithium cracking station, an old industrial facility.
And that's useful how?
2 ways. 1, it's uninhabited, so it offers a place to maroon Mitchell to get him off the ship. 2, and this is critical, Kelso thinks the station's powerful energy packs might be adaptable. They could potentially use them to repair the Enterprise's main engines, allowing them to escape orbit and get home.
Ah, so it offers a potential solution, however desperate. Get Mitchell off the ship, fix the engines, leave him there.
It's a chance, a grim one, stranding him alone, maybe forever. But it's seen as less horrific than Spock's other alternative, killing him outright on board.
So that's the path they choose.
Yes. Faced with these terrible options, and with the weight of the Valiant's failure pressing down, they set course for Delta Vega. The plan is to maroon him there. It's a choice born of desperation, really, and the fading hope that isolating him might contain the threat.
So they reach Delta Vega. You said it's desolate, just this automated station.
Pretty much. Stark, lonely, uninhabited. A fitting stage for what's about to happen, I suppose.
And the plan unfolds, splitting up the tasks.
Right. Kelso, the chief engineer, takes a repair team down immediately. Their job is vital. Get to that lithium cracking station, try to interface with its power source, and somehow regenerate the Enterprise's main engines. If they fail, the ship stays trapped in orbit, completely vulnerable.
And Kirk, what's his role on the surface?
His task is, well, arguably heavier, emotionally. He transports down Mitchell, but not alone. He brings Spock and Dr. Daner with him. They're the ones who've been monitoring Mitchell most closely, the ones best equipped, maybe, to manage him. The goal remains grimly to leave him here.
How is Mitchell when they arrive on the planet? Is he aware of what's happening?
Oh, he's aware. The source gives us glimpses. He shows some basic physical needs, mentions being thirsty, but his enhanced senses are fully active. He immediately confirms he can sense their thoughts, their feelings. He knows they see him as a monster now.
Can he sense Kirk's feelings specifically?
Yes, the narrative mentions he senses the worry in Kirk. It's a poignant detail, isn't it? That connection, that awareness of his friend's turmoil, it still persists, even as he's changing so profoundly.
But does he accept being marooned?
Absolutely not. That glimpse of connection vanishes quickly. He asserts his will, his growing power. He flatly refuses, stating, "I can't let you force me down there."
He's becoming defiant.
More than defiant. He starts vocalizing his ambition. He talks about assessing just what kind of a world I can use now that he has this power. And then the ultimate horrifying goal slips out. He contemplates being like a god.
Like a god. Wow, so attempts to control him physically must be failing now.
Increasingly difficult, yes. They try keeping him sedated, unconscious, but his mental power, his sheer will, is becoming strong enough to fight it off, to overcome physical restraints and chemical influence. He's becoming too strong to simply manage.
And Kelso, back at the station, he must realize the danger if Mitchell breaks free completely.
He does, and he takes this desperate contingency measure. While working on the engines, he wires up the fuel bins at the lithium station to a remote destruct switch.
A self-destruct.
For the station, yeah. His plan, his last resort, is to blow up this whole valley, destroying the power source, and hopefully Mitchell along with it, if he escapes Kirk's group and proves completely uncontrollable. It shows how extreme they perceive the threat to be.
Meanwhile, what's Dr. Diener's state? Is she still holding out hope?
Her perspective is really complex here, caught in the middle. Early on the planet, she's still arguing that Mitchell is not evil. She's trying to differentiate his state, his mutation, from actual malicious intent.
Contrasting with Spock's view. Right.
Exactly. Spock's assessment remains detached, functional. It doesn't matter he's trying to be evil, it's what he is mutating into that's dangerous, regardless of intent. Diener seems torn between her scientific objectivity, maybe lingering hope, and perhaps something else.
Something else.
The narrative hints, and later confirms, that the barrier's energy is affecting her too, just more slowly than Mitchell. So her perspective might already be subtly shifting, influenced by the power beginning to stir within her.
And then, does Mitchell break free?
Yes. The inevitable happens. He makes a run for it, tries to get through the planet's own defensive force field, presumably similar to the one at the galactic edge. And the crucial observation in the source is, this time, he recovers much faster.
He's getting stronger, adapting.
Seems like it. The barrier attempt doesn't weaken him as much as the first encounter did. He bounces back quickly and escapes their immediate control. He's loose on Delta Vega.
And Dr. Diener, what does she do when he escapes?
This is the pivotal moment for her. She doesn't stay with Kirk and Spock. She goes with Mitchell.
She chooses him?
She does. And when Kirk confronts her, she admits the terrifying truth. The change, the transformation, it's happening to her too. It just took longer to manifest after the barrier impact than it did for Mitchell, with his higher initial rating. Her exact words are, it just took a little longer.
So she's not just a psychiatrist observing anymore. She's becoming like him.
Exactly. She's now caught between her old self, her humanity, her professional ethics, and this burgeoning, intoxicating power that she's starting to feel, just like Mitchell. She's crossed a line.
So now Mitchell is loose, with Diener seemingly siding with him, and his power is accelerating. What does he do?
He fully embraces it. The source describes him reveling in his godlike abilities now. He performs what he himself calls a miracle.
A miracle? Like what?
Creating matter from energy, apparently.
Yeah.
He produces Caffarian apples, a specific fruit from a planet he and Kirk had visited together years ago.
Making a point. Showing off his power in a very personal way to Kirk.
Precisely. It's a demonstration, a taunt. And he states his goal explicitly now, to be like God. He talks about the allure of that power, the ability to make the world anything you want it to be. And crucially, he says he sees Elizabeth Diener sharing that feeling, that potential.
This sounds like megalomania taking complete hold.
It escalates quickly into outright blasphemy and psychological torment, directed mainly at Kirk. He calls himself a god, dismisses Kirk as a very foolish man, totally inadequate to challenge him now.
Does he use his telepathy?
Yes, he speaks directly into Kirk's mind across the distance. Can you hear me, James? And he lays out his new philosophy chillingly. Morals are for men, not gods.
So conventional morality is beneath him now.
Completely. He culminates this assertion of dominance by demanding Kirk kneel and pray to me.
Wow. And Diener. Is she just passively accepting this?
She's caught in this final, agonizing conflict. Part of her, the human part, the psychiatrist, is still fighting it. She pleads with Mitchell, you're still human. At least partly you are. She even turns to Kirk, recognizing the danger, saying, you must help me before it goes too far.
So there's still a flicker of her old self.
A flicker, yes, but the power, the transformation is incredibly strong. In the next breath, she's siding with Mitchell again, declaring what he's doing is right for him and me and for humanity. She seems to genuinely believe in that moment that this monstrous evolution is the correct path forward. It's a vivid portrayal of being torn apart by this internal battle.
Does Kirk try to reach her one last time?
He does. In a really interesting, desperate move, he appeals not to her emotions, but to her professional identity, her psychiatric training.
Wow.
He doesn't argue about gods or power anymore. He asks her to analyze Mitchell, clinically, based on fundamental human nature. He talks about human frailties, the ugly, savage things we all keep buried deep inside us. And he asks what happens when someone gets infinite power, removing all need for restraint over those impulses. His challenge to her is direct. What's your prognosis, doctor?
Trying to force her back into her role as an objective observer of human psychology, even Mitchell's psychology.
Exactly. It's his last gamble to connect with the Dr. Diener he knew, the scientist, before the final confrontation.
And does it work? How does it end?
It leads directly into the violent climax. Mitchell, perhaps angered by Kirk's defiance or Daner's wavering, fully unleashes his destructive power. He kills Kelso back at the station, strangling him telekinetically from miles away, just snaps his neck.
Just like that. Horrifying.
And seeing this, perhaps shocked back to her senses by the raw violence, Dr. Diener makes her final choice. In a last act demonstrating her remaining humanity, her sense of duty, she turns her own nascent powers against Mitchell, trying to weaken him, trying to help Kirk.
She sacrifices herself.
Essentially, yes. Kirk later records that she gave her life in performance of her duty. Her intervention, though brief, disrupts Mitchell, maybe injures him slightly, and crucially gives Kirk the opening he needs.
For the final fight.
For the final, brutal, physical confrontation between the two former friends, which ultimately ends with Kirk managing to kill Mitchell.
So Mitchell is dead, Diener is dead, Kelso is dead. What happens immediately after?
The immediate aftermath on Delta Vega is grim, and Kirk's orders reflect the sheer scale of the threat they felt they just faced. He contacts Spock on the Enterprise.
What are his orders?
Recognizing that maybe even Mitchell's death hasn't ended the danger, or that the planet itself is somehow tainted, he issues this terrifying contingency plan. He tells Spock, "If you have not received a signal from me within 12 hours, meaning if Kirk himself doesn't survive what happens next on the planet, then Spock is to proceed at maximum warp to the nearest Earth base with my recommendation."
And the recommendation is?
This entire planet be subjected to a lethal concentration of neutron radiation.
Destroy the whole planet. Sterilize it completely.
That's the order. An incredibly extreme measure. It just starkly illustrates the existential level of danger they believed Mitchell, and the power he represented, truly posed. Annihilate the world to ensure it can never spread.
Wow. But Kirk does survive, presumably. What happens then?
He does. And the narrative ends not with action, but with this moment of quiet, profound reflection back on the ship. Kirk is finalizing the official ship's records.
How does he record their deaths?
For Dr. Diener, he records that she gave her life in the line of duty, acknowledging her final act of sacrifice. For Lieutenant Commander Gary Mitchell, he gives the same official notation, died in the performance of duty.
The same. Even after everything.
Yes. But then Kirk adds this crucial, deeply personal log entry, almost a justification. He adds, he didn't ask for what happened to him. Kirk wants his friend's official service record to end that way. It shows him still grappling with it, trying to reconcile the monster Mitchell became with the man, the friend he knew, recognizing him as, in a way, a victim of these cosmic circumstances as much as a villain.
That's quite something. A moment of grace, almost.
It is, and it leads to this incredibly rare moment of open emotion from Spock. Witnessing Kirk's struggle and his final entry, Spock states simply, "I felt for him too."
Spock admitting feeling for Mitchell.
Yeah. Acknowledging the shared, complex response. Fear, yes, but also sadness for the loss. It's a powerful moment.
And Kirk's response to Spock.
It's telling. Seeing this flicker of empathy, Kirk says, "I believe there's some hope for you after all, Mr. Spock." Acknowledging that shared human or perhaps Vulcan human response to tragedy transcends logic, even for someone like Spock.
Okay, quite an intense narrative. Let's try to unpack some of the bigger takeaways here, the analytical threads from this source material. First off, that barrier at the edge of the galaxy, what was it?
It remains a huge mystery, doesn't it? The source never definitively explains it. Was it natural? Some kind of cosmic boundary phenomenon? Was it artificial? A remnant of something ancient? Maybe a warning system? Or something even stranger, extra-dimensional?
And the physics are just baffling. Physically stopping a ship, but having negative sensor readings for density, energy, radiation.
Right. It breaks the rules as understood within that universe. Its actual nature is left as this big, ominous, unanswered question.
Then there's the link between the barrier, the neural effects, and ESP. The source makes that connection absolutely explicit.
It does. It's not subtle. Encounter barrier, neural circuits affected, ESP users transformed, which forces you to ask, what does that imply about human potential in this narrative? Are there latent abilities, psychic or kinetic, just waiting under the surface?
And this barrier is some kind of key. A dangerous key, obviously, but a key nonetheless. It raises questions about evolution, doesn't it? Could crossing certain cosmic thresholds fundamentally change us?
That seems to be exactly what the narrative is exploring, and the speed of that change in Mitchell. That's critical too.
The geometric progression, the penny doubling.
Yeah, it's such a powerful analogy for how quickly something can spiral out of control. This wasn't gradual adaptation, it was an explosion of power. From faster reading to telekinesis to manipulating life functions in days, it suggests some forms of power just inherently outpace any ability to manage or understand them.
Which leads directly to that ethical nightmare, the quandary they faced.
Exactly, the preemptive action question. When someone gains abilities that will make them an existential threat, not maybe, but definitely based on that growth curve before they've actually committed mass murder or whatever, is acting against them justified? Is killing them justified?
Who gets to make that call?
Mm-hmm.
Based on potential, not yet fully realized action. It's a horrible dilemma.
It is. The source doesn't give easy answers, but it shows the brutal necessity the characters felt they were under. And the Valiant story provides the historical justification within the narrative.
Right, the comparison to the Valiant is key context. It says, this happened before and hesitation was fatal.
Precisely. It's not just Kirk and Spock guessing. They have data, however fragmented, suggesting the previous captain waited too long and paid the ultimate price. It validates, in a grim way, the terrible choice Kirk eventually made. Delay wasn't an option.
And the theme of power corrupting, or maybe power revealing?
Yeah, the relationship between power and humanity is central. As Mitchell gains godlike power, his empathy, his compassion, his connection to others seems to just erode, replaced by arrogance, contempt, cruelty.
So does the source suggest absolute power inevitably corrupts, especially when applied to a flawed human base?
It certainly presents a strong case for it. When all restraints are removed, when you have that much power, do the ugly, savage things Kirk mentioned just inevitably surface and amplify? Mitchell's transformation definitely suggests that power without wisdom or compassion is just amplified human ugliness.
It also highlights that tension between logic and emotion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Spock versus Kirk.
Absolutely. Spock's cold logic eliminates the threat. Kirk's emotional turmoil. He's my friend. It's that fundamental conflict and high-stakes decisions. And Dr. Diener's tragic path shows the danger zone where hope, scientific curiosity, maybe even the nascent power in herself blinds her to the immediate, escalating reality until it's too late.
Finally, this idea of being a god. Mitchell declares himself one, but his behavior
is incredibly petty and human, right? As Kirk points out, one jealous god. He demands worship, gets angry, acts out of spite. It suggests that just having the power doesn't make you divine. Maybe true divinity requires more than just ability. Maybe it requires wisdom, compassion, perspective. Things Mitchell clearly lacked. His godhood was just amplified human flaws.
So we've journeyed through this really intense source material, from that mysterious signal from the past, right through to this profound ethical and existential crisis at the galaxy's edge.
Yeah, this deep dive really showed us the potential and, frankly, terrifying consequences of hitting the truly unknown, the sheer speed that unchecked power can escalate, and the impossible, agonizing decisions people face when a threat emerges from someone they knew, someone they cared about.
It definitely makes you think about the nature of power, what it means to be human, and that razor-thin line between incredible potential and absolute catastrophe. It's a story that certainly sticks with you.
It does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a possible future, one that explored not just the edge of space, but the complex, dangerous edges of human or maybe post-human nature itself.
And as always, we leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. Based on this narrative, if gaining immense reality-bending power truly requires shedding your fundamental humanity, your empathy, your vulnerability, your connection to others, what is the real cost of that kind of evolution? Is it a price worth paying, even if it unlocks ultimate potential?